I don't know if I'll be in time, but once I'm done, I can join the meeting, and I didn't know if that was going to, disrupt your proceeding if I do that.
I appreciate you asking. That'd be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see who else we have here. I see Mr. Williams is joining us now.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you, Mr. Williams?
I'm well, thank you. And you?
I'm well, thank you.
It's my understanding, Mr. Doherty, the exhibit tech is finishing up another hearing.
Okay.
So he says he may be a few minutes late.
Okay. Any objection, Mr. Williams or Mr. Mulholland, to waiting for him?
No, no, Judge.
Okay.
No
Mr. Williams?
problem.
Okay, enough. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
There you are.
I apologize for being delayed just a little bit. I'm trying to get off this other one real quick. Can you hold 1 second?
We certainly can. Thank you.
I'm doing my best.
And Ms. Kakavas, take
Yes.
it away.
Okay, I am Elena Kakavas, the hearing officer presiding over this matter, and this is the case of the Board of Education of the Greenberg Central School District against Terry Williams, and it is a proceeding pursuant to four misconduct.
And Ms. Kakavas,
Yes.
take it away. Ms. Kakavas.
We have a delay on the recording. Are we good?
I believe everyone just has to mute themselves. If they're watching the recording, you're going to hear it come through.
Okay. All right. So if everybody could mute themselves, and let me
And Judge, you were at, and the proceeding is pursuant to,
a proceeding for misconduct brought pursuant to education law, section 1709, sub 18. The appearances remain the same as on the prior 2 days of hearing. We have an additional district exhibit which was submitted by Mr. Mulholland to be marked as District Exhibit 48, the minutes of the January 17th, 2020 board meeting. And Mr. Williams, do you stipulate to that going in as a district exhibit?
No.
Okay, then Mr. Mulholland, you'll need to, during the course of your testimony, bring it in through a witness, okay? And you can, of course, at that time, Mr. Williams, make an objection and we can have a discussion and I'll make a ruling, okay?
Judge,
Yes,
just give me 1 second. I want to put a new disc in. For some reason, this is saying,
okay.
oh God. I don't know what's happening. Judge, I'm sorry.
Nope, that's fine.
It's not really my pick, and I don't want to write manually, so I don't have to. I don't want to hold this up, Judge. I'm gonna have to write manually until a break, and then I'll try to.
Gary, do you need a minute? You can take it.
Thank you.
Judge Kakavas, can we adjourn till maybe 5-10 minutes and then come back, or?
Why don't we do that? So we can adjourn until 6:20.
Thank you.
hearing officer 18 is my response to Mr. Williams, and those are entered into the record. In terms of our procedure today, I will remind everybody that at our last day of hearing, which was May 5th, we concluded with the cross-examination of the district's first witness, Ms. Darden Cintron. We would proceed normally to the redirect examination of that witness. Ms. Darden Cintron, however, did advise when we were scheduling these sessions that she would be unable to attend today. So Mr. Mulholland has requested permission to proceed with the examination of his second witness and to resume the examination of Ms. Darden Cintron with his redirect examination when we meet again at our next day, which will be the 13th. That's correct, Mr. Mulholland?
Yes, it is, Judge.
Okay,
Thank you for the accommodation.
yes, you're welcome. So we will then proceed if you'd like to call your second witness.
Yes, Judge. The board calls Dr. Tanya Dragic.
Okay, Dr. Dragic, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that your testimony will be the truth? I can't hear you. I think you're muted, maybe. Can you hear her, Mr. Mulholland?
No, I cannot, Judge.
But
Perhaps
there's no
the vol-
icon for her to saying that she's muted either.
It might be the volume button on your keyboard.
Judge, I think she's in.
She says she's gonna log off and join back on.
Yes, go ahead. I'm still,
Anya, can you dial in on the phone?
Maybe she has to go in and out again. I don't know. Oh, I think she logged off to come on again. I know mine froze too. So I had to, I don't know what's going on with technology tonight.
Right, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, I have to sort of perch myself somewhere. I'm in a different room.
Okay. All right, then let's begin again. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that your testimony will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and I would simply instruct you that as you are testifying, make sure you're testifying from your recollection. If you don't recall something, just state that that's the case, and counsel will help you work through a process where you can refresh your recollection possibly. And otherwise, just please remember to listen carefully to the question asked and answer that directly. And if you hear an objection, wait for the objection to be stated and for me to resolve it before you continue on. Okay?
Got it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mulholland. Whenever you're ready.
Yes, and Judge, I would ask that we remind the witness to keep her voice up.
Yeah.
So we hear all the testimony. Doctor, would you state your full name for the record, please?
Well, actually, my full name is Tatiana Dragic, but I go by Tanya Dragic.
I understand you have a PhD in molecular and cellular biology.
I do.
For about 10 years, you were an associate professor in the Department of Microbiology and Immunology at the Albert Einstein School of Medicine. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Today, you're no longer a professor and you focus on assisting scientists and other members of academia in the pursuit of research funding and grants. Is that an accurate statement?
Well, I'm still a visiting associate professor, but yes, that is currently my job description.
All right, thank you. I'd like to bring you back to the night of December 17, 2019. There has been testimony about that night. It involved an executive session concerning the potential tenure of Dr. Ron Valente. Do you recall that evening generally?
Absolutely.
Right. Judge, with your permission, I'd like the tech to bring up Board Exhibit 4, which is already in evidence.
Yes, go ahead.
There you go.
Dr. Dragic, you recall these as the minutes from the December 17, 2019 meeting during which Dr. Valente's tenure was first discussed in executive session?
Yes.
Right. According to these minutes, you went into executive session at 7:17 p.m. Do you recall generally the reason why executive session was chosen to have this discussion?
Well, it's why we always choose to go into executive session when we need to discuss personnel matters.
And why do you do that as a matter of course?
So I think essentially there are three reasons why we do that. One is really to protect the privacy of the person who we're discussing. The second is to protect the district from possible litigation. And the third reason is that we are a board, we are a team, we are supposed to come together as such and have a vigorous, honest, and open discussion about personnel matters.
Were those reasons in play on the night of December 17 when you went into executive session?
Oh, absolutely.
Do
This was an important one.
Why do you say that?
Well, because it had to do with the assistant superintendent of curriculum, and that's a very important position in the district, and it merited very vigorous discussion.
Do you recall generally the executive session discussion that took place? And I just would like a yes or a no on that because I want to be very circumspect in not revealing any aspect of the discussion beyond what's been disclosed or is appropriate for disclosure. So just yes or no, do you generally recall the executive session discussion about Dr. Valente's potential tenure?
Yes.
There's been reference to a statement attributed to you, a comment concerning age. Do you generally recall that statement that you made?
Are you looking for a yes or no, or do you?
Yes or no if you generally recall the statement.
I generally recall making a statement, yes.
So let me ask you, in context of the overall discussion, where in the context of the course of the deliberation did that comment come?
Well, I want to preface my answer by saying that I came to that executive session very diligently prepared, with a number of concerns, and I thought that overall, really, we had a very vigorous and open discussion. I didn't really find the discussion to be in any way contentious. I think it was actually a very good discussion, and I think it was sometime towards the end that I sort of made an unfortunate off-the-cuff comment, which really had nothing to do with my concerns. It was just, I think it was just part of what humans do when they are very engaged. And yes, I made a reference to Mr. Valenti's age.
And in terms of the overall layout of the deliberation, you were in executive session according to the minutes from 7:17 to 8:27 p.m. roughly. Where would you estimate that the comment occurred in that 1 hour and 10-minute period? To the best of your estimation.
I think it was really towards the end, before we closed up and went back out into public.
Did the board have occasion, and Mr. Doherty, you could take down Exhibit 4, please. Did the board have occasion to discuss the potential tenure of Dr. Valenti again after December 17, 2019?
Yes, we did.
And do you know what month that was?
It was January.
All right. Judge, with your permission, I'd like to show the witness Exhibit 48 for identification, which bears on the line of testimony.
Yes, let the record reflect that we've marked as District Exhibit 48 the minutes of the board meeting for January 7th, 2020. Go ahead, Mr. Mahan.
Yes, and Dr. Dragic, do you recognize Exhibit 48? Have you seen it before?
Yes, I have.
What is Exhibit 48?
So these are the minutes of our work session from January 7th. And I remember it well because it's Orthodox Christmas and I was there.
Is this the meeting when the board had occasion to discuss again the potential tenure of Dr. Ron Valenti?
Yes, it was.
And to the best of you, well, let me ask you this. As a matter of course, do you generally review board meeting minutes when they are published as part of your general duties as a board member?
Yes, I do, yeah.
And are you confident that you reviewed these minutes at the time they were published?
Maybe not exactly at the time, but yes, I did go over them, yeah.
Do you believe that these minutes accurately reflect what took place that evening?
Yes.
Judge, I offer Exhibit 48 as Board Exhibit 48.
Objection, Mr. Williams?
No objection.
Okay, so moved.
All right. I'd like to first look at the people in attendance on this evening, January 7, 2020. If you could just highlight everything above point A, opening items, Mr. Doherty, type of meeting down to others present. The top third above point A. Yes, right there. Perfect. First question, Dr. Dragic. Who was present from the board? Which members?
Everyone.
And did one of the members arrive late?
Yes, Mr. Williams was late.
And he got there at 9:40, according to this. Is that accurate?
I personally wasn't timing him, but I assume that is right, yeah.
You have no reason to disbelieve the accuracy of the minutes.
No.
I see that others were present. The Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction and Personnel, that's Dr. Valenti, the same individual whose tenure, potential tenure was up for discussion, correct?
Correct.
And I see a reference to Jasmine Schlesinger, Representative Carol Melnick. Is that the board's regular outside counsel?
Yes.
At some point during this meeting, did you use the executive session procedure in order to have the continued discussion concerning Dr. Valenti's potential tenure?
Very much so, yes.
All right.
Objection.
Basis, Mr. Williams?
Council is bringing in another executive session, and there is no evidence that this conversation that he is alluding to occurred.
Mr. Mulholland, you want to be heard?
I'm about to ask Dr. Dragic, not about the content of the discussion, but only about the topics that were discussed. And it is completely germane, and it is certainly another executive session. It's part of my case.
Yes, and the witness is testifying, and if there's an issue as to credibility, then that can be argued. You can proceed, Mr. Mulholland.
I would like Mr. Doherty to highlight the bottom third of the second page of Exhibit 48, Section C, titled Executive Session, all the way to the bottom. Thank you, sir. Dr. Dragic, I see according to this, you went into executive session. What time was that?
Well, here, again, I don't remember the exact time, but here it says 8:17, so I'm going to go with that.
The reference is to discuss the employment history of particular persons being considered for board action this evening. And at the next evening, was Dr. Ron Valenti one of those persons?
Yes.
I see that under the section reconvene in open session, there are 3 line items. Could you read those, please? Beginning with our.
You want me to read those?
Yes, read them out loud for the record, please.
Okay. R. Valenti left the meeting at 9:30 p.m. The board reconvened in open session at 11:09 p.m. Carol Melnick left the meeting at 11:09 p.m.
Would this indicate to you which portion of the meeting in executive session it was when you discussed Dr. Valenti's potential tenure?
Objection.
Just from looking at that lineup.
Wait a second, there's an objection. Mr. Williams?
He's leading the witness.
I disagree. You can answer the question.
We discussed Dr. Valenti once he left because obviously that was the only way we could discuss him.
Is there a practice that the board follows when you have a particular guest on hand at an executive session and something needs to be discussed that should not be heard by that guest?
Absolutely. We ask the person to leave the room.
And so would you describe, and I think you just alluded to it, but just to expand on that, explain what would have happened, what did happen here between 8:17 and 9:30 p.m. with regard to Dr. Valenti's presence?
Well, I have to tell you, I don't recall exactly what the discussion between that was. I mean, I think it was just other executive discussion, and then he was asked to leave because we wanted to discuss his tenure. So he was asked to leave, and that was when we discussed that. That was when that part of executive session took place.
Would you characterize that as a standard practice?
Absolutely.
I see that according to this, the second line you read, the board reconvened in open session at 11:09. Does that indicate that you remained in executive session without Dr. Valenti from 9:30 to about 11:10, 11:09?
Yes.
So that would be approximately an hour and 40 minutes, right?
Yes.
And Ms. Melnick, the board's regular outside counsel, was with you that entire time.
She was.
There's been testimony previously that the board received information and advice from its general counsel that what had happened in December, on December 17th, was not age discrimination. Did that happen during this meeting?
Objection.
Basis?
The memo from, any information from our counsel is protected by client attorney privilege, and he is leading the witness.
Mr. Mulholland, you want to be heard?
Well, this has already been revealed by the board at the board's own discretion. It is the board that controls the privilege. And in order to present its case, the board has already disclosed through through Antoinette Darden-Cintron's testimony that advice was given to the board to the effect that the comment made on December 17 did not amount to age discrimination. There has been a question raised about where and when that advice was imparted through Mr. Williams' questions of Antoinette Darden-Cintron, specifically a memo that was sent around by her on April 9, 2020. My intention here is simply to clarify when it was that the board received that advice, and most specifically, whether Mr. Williams was present when the advice was imparted.
Yes, the objection's overruled.
So, Dr. Dragic, you heard Antoinette Darden-Cintron's testimony, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you heard her refer to the fact that the board had been told generally, without going into specifics, that the comment made on December 17th did not amount to age discrimination. You heard her testify to that effect.
Yes, I did.
Is this when that happened?
Yes, it was.
Right. Now, Mr. Williams displayed to Antoinette Darden-Cintron an exhibit, which is Respondent's Exhibit, and I want to bring that up with the text assistance and judge's approval. Just wanted to get the right number. Respondent's Exhibit 38, Judge, if I could ask the tech to bring that up.
Yes, go ahead.
Tell one more time, which one it is?
Respondents 38, please.
38, okay, thank you.
Dr. Dragic, do you recall seeing this exhibit when it was displayed the other night?
I do recall that, yes.
Is this April 9, 2020 email and the memo that is attached to it, which has been maintained in privilege, is this the document by which the board received the advice?
No, we actually received the advice orally at that January 7th meeting in executive session when Carol Melnick explained to us.
I don't want you to go into the substance. I just want to
Okay.
get the timing. There was
Got it.
suggestions. Let me clarify. There was a suggestion through questions posed to Antoinette Darden-Cintron that this memo on April 9 was the means by which the board received that advice. My question to you is that correct?
No,
And again, last time, when did the board received that advice?
on January 7th.
All right. Mr. Daugherty, could you please just go back to Board Exhibit 48, page 2, the same section you just had illuminated. According to this, Dr. Valenti left this executive session at 9:30 PM, as you've testified, right?
Yes,
On the first page of this document, we saw that Mr. Williams arrived for the meeting late. Do you recall that?
yes, I do, actually, yeah.
If we could go back to the first page, Mr. Doherty, I want to see again the time reference to when Mr. Williams arrived. What time did Mr. Williams arrive according to the minutes, Dr. Dragic?
9:40.
So then, other than the first 10 minutes, he was present when you discussed the potential tenure of Dr. Valenti with the board's general counsel. Is that a fair statement?
Yes,
Objection.
Basis? The question's already been asked and answered, but put your objection on the record. What is the basis?
The witness has already stated that she was not sure of the times. She has only corroborated or confirmed times that are written. So for her to say that a certain discussion happened at a certain time is inconsistent with what she already said.
Okay, that is actually for argument, but Mr. Mulholland, you want to respond on the record?
No, Judge, the minutes are the best record of the times, and I believe the minutes speak for themselves.
Yes, that's accurate. Go ahead.
Mr. Doherty, I have no further questions about Exhibit 48. I'd like now to, with the court's approval, with judge's approval, bring up Board Exhibit 42, which
Yes.
is also in evidence.
Go ahead.
Dr. Dragic, there's been testimony concerning the meeting on April 7, 2020 already. Do you recall that meeting?
yes, I do.
If we could start looking again at the first third of this before call to order, I just want to highlight who was present on this evening, starting at 6:30 PM. Mr. Doherty, from type of meeting down to others present. Further down, yeah. Thank you, perfect. So for this meeting, Dr. Dragic, which board members were present?
Cora Carey, Antoinette Darden-Cintron, myself, Tracy Mayers, Ashley Pineda, David Warner, and Terry Williams.
And did Ms. Mayers arrive ultimately?
Yes,
According to the minutes, when did she arrive?
6:56.
So you had the whole board was present at that point.
Yes,
Was Dr. Valenti present for this meeting?
so, yes, he was.
All right. If we could now look down to the section about the middle third, Mr. Doherty, beginning with executive session. The board convened an executive session at 6:55 according to these minutes. Do you recall that, Dr. Dragic, as being the case?
Again, I personally didn't keep track of time, but I do trust that the minutes are truthful.
According to these minutes, the board was in executive session for over 3 hours, 3 hours and 3 minutes. Is that your rough recollection, that it was an executive session that spanned approximately 3 hours?
Yes,
And I see that Ron Valenti left the meeting at 9:58. Is that your recollection, that he was there for the whole executive session?
yes.
What is your withdrawn? You spoke about the practice that the board follows if there's a member or an individual present in an executive session and it's appropriate for that person to leave. At any point, was Dr. Valenti Was there a discussion about Dr. Valenti leaving the meeting, leaving the executive session?
Absolutely not.
You've heard testimony that it was during this meeting that Mr. Williams made statements alluding to your comment back on December 17. We don't have to go over that, but just to put things in context, you're familiar with what's been said in that regard, yes?
Yes, I am.
And do you agree that this is the meeting when that took place?
Yes.
Was there any reason that Mr. Williams could not follow that practice that you described, whereby an individual who's present in the executive session is asked to recuse himself or herself, or is asked to leave? Is there any reason he could not have followed that?
Objection.
Basis?
The witness cannot know what my reasoning would be.
Okay, why don't you rephrase your question, Mr. Mulholland?
Dr. Dragic, was there any, before, strike that, Dr. Dragic, before Mr. Williams began to speak, did anyone on the board, from your vantage point, have any reason to ask Dr. Valenti to leave the meeting?
None whatsoever.
Was Dr. Valenti on the agenda? Was his tenure a topic of discussion on this evening, April 7?
It was not. He was not.
Was there anything about Dr. Valenti that was planned for this executive session?
No.
Was there any reason a board member, yourself, for example, would have known to say before Mr. Williams spoke, wait a minute, we should ask Dr. Valenti to leave if that's what you're going to talk about? Did you have any reason to think that way?
Not at all.
Objection.
Basis?
He is again asking the witness about what myself or any other board member thought, which is impossible to know.
I believe Mr. Mulholland rephrased his question in the middle of it to address the perspective of the witness.
Thank you.
So Dr. Dragic, from your vantage point, once you heard Mr. Williams' voice, did you know what he was about to say that would give you any notice at all to say, wait a minute, we have to ask Dr. Valenti to leave?
None whatsoever.
Once you heard Mr. Williams utter the words that he said, referring back to your own comments from the executive session on December 17, what was your reaction?
It was, well, it was a series of reactions. I think the first one was just utter shock that a fellow board member would say something like this, especially in light of the fact that our counsel had previously told us that this was a non-issue. And I think my second reaction was really sort of grave concern. I mean, I think I immediately realized that the risk that the board and the district were being put at by this comment.
You're referring to a litigation risk?
Absolutely.
When he referred to what you had said and the consequence of those words, did Mr. Williams speak accurately, at least to your knowledge?
No, I think he referred to age discrimination, and it was clearly, I think for me, the whole issue had been, first of all, I never age discriminated against Dr. Valenti. Our counsel clearly told us on January 7th that no age discrimination had taken place. And then to have it twisted in that way in executive session in front of Dr. Valenti, It was pretty devious.
All right. I'd like to change topics now, Dr. Dragic, and focus you on the events of July 2020 and the superintendent of schools contract extension. There's been testimony already about this. With the judge's permission, I would ask Mr. Doherty to bring up Board Exhibit 43.
Yes, of course.
Dr. Dragic, you recall these as the minutes of the July 25, 2020 board meeting?
Yes, I do.
There's been testimony that this was the night when the superintendent's contract extension was discussed in executive session. Is that your recollection?
Yes.
I'd like to ask Mr. Doherty to focus on the page 2, the bottom half of the document, beginning with the title "Adjourn to Executive Session." According to these minutes, Dr. Dragic, the board went into executive session at approximately 1:20, and Dr. Chase, was she asked to be excused from the meeting at any point?
Well, she had to be. We were going to discuss her, so yes.
And do the minutes reflect that?
Yes, they do.
Read the line, please, into the record.
T. Chase was excused from the meeting at 2:25 p.m.
And you remained in executive session then until 3:18, according to these minutes, correct?
Yeah.
You've discussed already the reasons why the board would choose to use the executive session privilege for a particular discussion. Do those reasons take on any different significance when the superintendent's position at the district is in question?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
And why do you say that?
Because I think that the single most important function of the Board of Education is to hire, to retain, or to let go a superintendent. It is the most important relationship that the board has in the district. The superintendent is supposed to be responsive and answer to the board. So this is really, it kind of takes the meaning of executive session to a whole nother level when we're talking about the superintendent.
And if you're speaking about the potential continuation or non-continuation, discontinuance of the superintendent's contract, how does that impact the significance of the privacy concern that you discussed earlier?
I think it really becomes, well, I think that the privacy concern is always critical, but I think that in this case, it's extra critical because, again, it's not just about protecting the district here, but it's also about protecting the superintendent and the superintendent's privacy and ability to function, whether that superintendent remains or moves on to another district.
When you say the superintendent's privacy, what are you referring to? And Mr. Doherty, you could take down the exhibit, please. What are you referring to when you say the superintendent's privacy? Could you be more particular?
Well, I think
Objection.
Basis.
The council is asking the witness for legal interpretation, and the witness is not a lawyer.
Mr. Mulholland?
I'm asking the witness to elaborate on her answer. She said that the superintendent's privacy is a concern. I'd like to hear Dr. Dragic expand on that.
Yes, that's fine. Go ahead. You can answer.
So the superintendent, any superintendent, has a challenging job. And when a board convenes to talk about the contract, it's a very serious discussion about where the district is, how the superintendent has or hasn't contributed to that particular place where the board wants to take the district. And at the end of the day, if the board decides that they don't want to retain a particular superintendent, it should be something that's cloaked in executive session so that the superintendent can then move on with dignity, basically, and seek another position without in any way being compromised by whatever was discussed in executive session.
Excuse me, Counselor, before you go on, I'm expecting a delivery. Can I just go answer my doorbell? There's no one here but me.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you for that accommodation.
Back on the record.
Dr. Dragic, you're muted. Okay. May I resume, Judge?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Dr. Dragic, do you recall seeing the email that Mr. Williams sent around on December 8, 2020 concerning the end of year board meeting scheduled for December 15, 2020?
I have seen many emails by Mr. Williams, including that one, yes.
If we could, with the judge's approval, have Mr. Doherty bring up Board Exhibit 28, please, which is already in.
Go ahead.
Dr. Dragic, did you see Board Exhibit 28, the December 8, 2020 email from Terry Williams at or about the time that it was issued?
Yes.
How did you see it? How did you get it, I should say?
It was sent to me as a screenshot by a community member.
This
By a who member? I didn't hear that. By what member?
community,
Community.
Are
Thank
you
you.
having trouble hearing me?
I can.
Repeat that one word.
Okay.
Dr. Dragic, the first sentence in bold from Mr. Williams states, I urge you to attend the December 15 board meeting via Zoom to inquire why Dr. Chase was denied a contract given her strong performance reviews. My question to you is, if questions were posed to you at a board meeting about why Dr. Chase was denied a contract extension, could you have answered those questions?
You mean if they were asked by the public?
Yes, if the public showed up at the December 15 board meeting and wanted to know why Dr. Chase was denied a contract extension, could you respond to those questions?
Absolutely not,
Why not?
because that was an executive session discussion, hence it's cloaked by executive privilege and it cannot be discussed with the public.
Has the board made an effort during the past, and I forgot to ask you at the outset, let me withdraw that. How long have you been on the board?
This is pretty much the end of my second year.
During the approximately 2 years that you've been on the board, has the board been concerned with establishing the community's confidence that the board is acting with transparency?
I think that
Objection.
Basis?
The witness has no way of knowing what the community is thinking or requesting or asking.
Okay, that wasn't the question, though. The question, read back the question, please, reporter.
During the approximate 2 years that you have been on the board, has the board been concerned with establishing the community's confidence that the board is acting with transparency?
That question's okay. You can answer that.
So the answer to that question is yes, absolutely. This has been one of our greatest concerns and one of our greatest efforts under President Darden Cintron's leadership was to really try and reestablish norms and ways of communicating with the community that would instill greater trust in the board.
In your view, as one board member, is it important that the community believe that the board is operating with transparency?
We cannot function without that trust.
What concerns, if any, do you have regarding the consequence of Mr. Williams stating publicly in his role as trustee that people should demand to know why the superintendent was denied a contract?
Well, I think it's really clearly misleading the public that they have a right to this information. And, you know, not everyone goes on NISBA and reads all the fine print about what boards can and can't do. So when you have a trustee make a statement like this, what that trustee is saying to the community is you have a right to ask these questions and a right to this information, and it's patently false. But what it does is it casts a shadow on the entire board and implies that we're in fact hiding something.
Was the board, in your view, hiding anything at all from the community?
No.
And could you explain your view on whether it is in the community's interest in any way for the executive session discussion concerning the superintendent's contract to remain private?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question, please?
Is it in the community's interest, in your view, for the discussion to remain private? The discussion concerning the superintendent's contract?
Well, it's in the community's interest and it's also in the superintendent's interest.
And could you elaborate on that? Why is it in the community's interest for this to remain a private discussion?
This is why the community has a board. This is why they elect us to represent them and to be able to go into executive session and to be able to sort of come together as a team that represents the community to make these decisions, but in a way that, again, protects the district from litigation, and also protects the superintendent.
I'd like to focus your attention now on the period February 2020, when the board was embarked on the interview process with the superintendent candidates. Could I focus your attention on that, please?
Sure.
On February 4, did the board meet with a series of initial round candidates for the superintendent's position?
Yes.
Did the board members each receive a set of questions that would be their questions to focus on with the candidates?
Yes.
And what was the reason for this approach, where each board member had a set of questions that he or she would repeat with each candidate?
Well, that's a little bit of a complicated question.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell, there are 7 of us, and we each picked, I believe it was 2 questions apiece to ask. And it is important for the sake of fairness and equal treatment of candidates that we ask the same questions, and pretty much that the format should remain somewhat, if not exactly the same, but fairly similar between candidates, such that they all, so that there is a kind of homogeneity, if you wish, in the process that will then allow us to more easily compare the candidates and move them or not into the next round of the interview process.
And was it necessarily ruinous to the whole process if one of you went slightly off script? Was it that rigid of an arrangement?
It's not an extremely rigid arrangement. I mean, I think, again, everyone is human, and I think to go a little bit off script, I mean, to smile or add a few words, I think that's not necessarily ruinous.
Did you, for example, Dr. Dragic, did you off script it?
Yes, I asked, one of the questions that I picked was about student achievement. And so I can't remember if it was maybe for 1 or 2 of the candidates. I prefaced that question by saying that this was a topic that was near and dear to my heart.
And Dr. Dragic, when you're meeting with candidates during this interview process, what's your job as a board member, or jobs if it's plural? What's your role? What do you understand your purpose when you're sitting there in an interview? What's your role?
It's the same role that any employer has, which is that you are, on the one hand, trying to decide what is the best possible candidate for the job. But at the same time, you're also trying to project a positive image of yourself as the employer, because you want to be able to attract that best candidate to come and work for you.
And when you made your personal comment concerning these achievement awards being near and dear to you, do you feel that hurt the process at all, the selling part of the process?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I guess probably the reason I said it was because I wanted to convey how important that was to me.
Now, Mr. Williams, did he stick to the process of asking the questions that he was selected to ask as agreed by the board as a whole?
No.
Did he go off script?
Yes.
Did he go off script the way you did with a remark about something of interest to himself that you would characterize as positive?
No.
Tell the judge, please, what Mr. Williams did.
So Mr. Williams.
Objection.
Basis?
Withdrawn.
Go ahead. You can answer.
So Mr. Williams had two questions that he picked and that were assigned to him. And For one of them, he prefaced the question by explaining to the candidates that they were basically interviewing in a district with a quote dysfunctional board. And then there was a second question where he explained to the candidates that one of the board members, and I'm sorry, I actually don't remember exactly the question, but I do remember him saying that one of the sitting board members was actually against a bond, that the consolidation bond that had gone down 2 years ago.
After Mr. Williams made these comments, was there a break in the action, so to speak? The next candidate came into the Zoom room.
Yes.
And do you recall any discussion by the board president with Mr. Williams regarding what he had done in making those comments concerning the board?
Yes, there was a discussion, and Antoinette asked him not to do that again.
And what generally was Mr. Williams' response to the board president asking him to stop with that sort of, with that behavior?
It was defiance, and I think there was I believe that there was a discussion about that he has a right to do this and that he's not actually lying. So if it's not a lie, then he can say it. And then he went on to say it again.
You mean at another interview?
Yes, yes.
And was there actually a break in between that first day when you were conducting first round interviews and the continuation of the first round interviews? Did they take place over 2 days?
They took place, yes, over 2 days, yes.
Do you know if there was any further discussion in between days where the board president pursued this issue with Mr. Williams?
I believe that there was an email communication about this topic.
And what is your understanding of Mr. Williams' response to that further effort to have him cease and desist from this approach toward the questioning?
So I actually do not recall if there was an email back, but I do know that he continued with his contextualizing of the questions.
On the second day?
On the second day, yes.
And using the same comments that he'd made the first day?
Yes.
All right, I'd like to change topics now, moving further into the month of February 2020. And with the judge's permission, I would ask Mr. Daugherty to bring up Respondents Exhibit 6.
That's fine.
Where would you like to focus?
First, if we could focus on the top third. Dr. Dragic, looking at Respondents Exhibit 6, which is already in evidence, do you recall generally this email from Board President Darden Cintron on February 24 to all board trustees, forwarding an email string directly below it?
Yes, I do.
If we could then go down to the blue text in the email from Jay Warona and illuminate that. Everything from February 24, the date line I'd like to see too, please. And from Jay Warona. Yeah, thank you. Mr. Williams had asked the board president some questions about this. I'd like to pick up on that. If you could read the sentence that begins with "however" into the record, and then I have a question for you about that sentence.
Okay, that's a long sentence. It's all the way down. Okay. However, what is missing from the description of my conversation with one of your board trustees is the more lengthy part of our of our discussion, which included my counseling the board member to search his conscience as to whether disseminating this document might negatively affect the ability of the board to keep its focus upon its most important and critical function, namely improving student performance.
Dr. Dragic, when you received this email from the board president forwarding to you Jay Warona's email, did you understand it? Did you know what Mr. Warona was referring to?
Yes,
What did you understand he was referring to?
I believe that he was referring to the sharing of Superintendent Chase's evaluation.
And what is this statement about searching his conscience?
Well, I think it goes back to the whole protection of privacy and the fact that it's just simply wrong.
Objection.
Basis?
The witness has no way of knowing what Jay Warona is thinking. All she can do is read what he said.
Mr. Mulholland?
Judge, the purpose of this exhibit, my use of it, is to demonstrate what was in the minds of the board members. And I believe it is completely relevant for one sitting board member, Dr. Dragic in this instance, to explain what this message conveyed to her, this message from Jay Warona.
Yes, certainly the witness can testify as to her interpretation of the information. Do you need the question read back?
I don't need the question repeated, so, okay, so my interpretation of this statement is that that Jay was really referring back to the issue of privacy and protecting the superintendent from exposure as he or she, in this case, she moves on to seek another position.
And what was Jay Warona counseling as regards distribution of the superintendent's evaluation?
Not to do it, not to distribute it.
And as a board member during this time period, did you understand who it was that was proposing to distribute the evaluation?
Yes,
Who?
Terry Williams.
If I could ask Mr. Doherty to drill further into this email, starting at the bottom of page 2, where there's a forwarded message from Terry Williams. This is an email that's part of the string. Do you see that, Dr. Dragic?
Yes.
Who was the author of this part that we're about to look at?
So this is from Terry Williams,
On what date?
February 21st, 2021.
All right. And who is he sending this to?
Antoinette Darden-Cintron.
And he CC, if we could go to the top of the page 3, who does Mr. Williams CC on this?
Well, he CCs our counsel, both of them. He CCs Dr. Caldwell, who is who was our contact at Ray and Associates, and then the rest of the board.
So you received this from Mr. Williams yourself?
Yes.
Right. If we could then look down towards the bottom of Mr. Williams' message on February 24 to the entire board. First of all, could you read the first 2 sentences there, beginning with, "I didn't disparage the board"?
I didn't disparage the board. I merely provided my opinion that the current board is dysfunctional as part of my question about board superintendent relationships.
And in fact, is that an accurate statement there when Mr. Williams admits that he told the candidates that the current board is dysfunctional in his view?
I'm sorry, you have to repeat that question. I'm not sure.
Is this admission by Mr. Williams accurate? That he provided his opinion that the current board is dysfunctional? He
Well,
said-
I think the part that's accurate here is that he said to the candidates that the current board is dysfunctional. I guess that is his opinion, yes.
Okay. Later on in this paragraph, Mr. Williams refers to a conversation he had with Jay Rorona. I'd like to direct your attention to that. If you could, Mr. Doherty, illuminate the portion of this that begins with "on another note." Okay. In this portion of his email, Mr. Williams makes a reference to his conversation with Jay Rorona. What is the date when he says that he had that conversation?
February 11th.
And was that before or after the final meeting with Dennis O'Hara, one of your top candidates?
I'm sorry, I actually don't recall when our last meeting with Mr. O'Hara was, Dr. O'Hara.
Well, if you could just keep that date, February 11th, there in your mind then.
Okay.
And I will ask Mr. Doherty to bring up Board Exhibit 33. You've seen this email before,
Yes, I have.
right? Does this is the email from Mr. Williams that's already in evidence? You've seen this?
Yes, yes.
When did he send this?
February 23rd.
The second sentence reads, "I would like to share information with you ahead of your interview later today." Does that refresh your recollection as to when the final interviews with Dennis O'Hara were?
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you.
And what was that date?
February 23rd.
So according to the email string that we just looked at, Respondents Exhibit 6, when was it that NYSBA attorney Jay Rorona told Terry Williams to search his conscience and in words and substance that he should not distribute the superintendent's evaluation?
So a little under 2 weeks before he actually did it.
On February 11, according to the
Yes.
email string.
Yes, February 11th, yes.
And Mr. Doherty, if you could go down in this February 23 email from Mr. Williams, let's focus on the middle part there. What did Mr. Williams include in his February 23 email to Dennis O'Hara?
So he included a petition to keep Dr. Chase as superintendent, a copy of Dr. Chase's evaluation, and a copy of the news story reporting that Dr. Chase's contract was not renewed. Oh, and lastly, copies of emails with examples of school board superintendent interactions.
Focusing on this evaluation in the middle portion, if you could highlight that, Mr. Doherty, that one bullet, a copy of Dr. Chase's evaluation. And the entire section, and just block that off and illuminate it, expand it for the witness. And the bullet below it, yes. Can you make that larger? Dr. Dragic, is this the evaluation that was the subject of Jay Warona's advice to Mr. Williams about searching his conscience?
Yes,
And just so the record is clear, this is the same evaluation that is the subject of that Respondents Exhibit 6 email string.
yes.
I see that in his message to the candidates, Mr. Williams is saying, you may want to ask how a majority of the board rated Dr. Chase effective, but a majority did not extend the contract. Do you recall seeing that in the email when you first received it back in February of 2020?
Yes, I do.
If any candidate had asked you these questions, could you possibly have answered within your duties as a board member?
You mean questions about Dr. Chase's evaluation?
Yes,
Absolutely not.
I'm
No.
sorry to answer.
What's
I'm
that?
sorry, Mike.
I didn't hear your answer because I was speaking. My fault, please. Answer again.
I'm sorry. My answer is that absolutely not.
With the judge's approval, I'd like to bring up Respondents Exhibit 4.
That's fine.
If you could expand the signature, the address block at the very top and the good morning superintendent candidate line, that's it. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. This is the version of the same email introduced by Mr. Williams as his Respondents Exhibit 4. Do you recognize it as that, Dr. Dragic?
I do.
In this version, because it came from Mr. Williams, we can see the blind carbon copy line. Do you see that?
Yes.
Who are the two blind carbon copy recipients that Mr. Williams sent this to?
They are our two finalists for superintendent of our district.
And for the
Dr. Linda Iverson and Dr. Dennis O'Hara.
What is the time that Mr. Williams sent this email to Dennis O'Hara?
Well, so here it says 8:46 a.m.
We've already established that you conducted the final interviews later that day. Approximately what time on February 23 were the interviews?
I don't remember the time. I want to say they were evening interviews, but I don't actually recall the exact time.
With the judge's permission, I'd ask Mr. Doherty to bring up Board Exhibit 47.
Yes, go ahead.
Do you recognize these minutes already in
Yes.
evidence as Exhibit 47?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And does this refresh your recollection as to approximately when the board convened to conduct the final interviews of Dennis O'Hara?
Yes, 6:30 p.m.
Did you know when you interviewed with Dennis O'Hara this evening that Terry Williams had sent that email marked as Board Exhibit 33 at 8:46 a.m. the same day?
I don't believe that I found out that day. I actually, I believe I found out later. I think Antoinette sent us, informed us all of this by email. So I did not know on the day of the interviews, no.
So you went through the executive session interview with Dennis O'Hara unaware of what Mr. Williams had said to him and what Mr. Williams had sent to him.
Yeah.
When you saw the email, what was your reaction? This is the February 23 email from Mr. Williams.
I gotta say, I was really devastated. I have to tell you, it was really one of the low points of being on this board. I mean, we had put in so much time and so much effort and so much money to really, in good faith, find the best superintendent for our district, for our children, and to see what was just clearly an effort to just torpedo the whole process was just, it was hard.
If we could bring up, please, again, Mr. Doherty, Board Exhibit 47, February 23 minutes.
Yes, go ahead.
If you could focus on the middle third, actually section A down to the be it resolved, and the body of the motion right to the bottom of the page. Fine, thank you, perfect. So Dr. Dragic, if you could just look to yourself quietly at the sequence of events laid out in these minutes and then describe to the judge for approximately how long you were in executive session and what happened when you came out of executive session.
So this was the executive session. I actually don't see the date the way that you highlighted it, but it started at 6:25, and basically this was the executive session where we chose as a board our finalist, and when we came out, we had a resolution to appoint Dr. Dennis O'Hara as our new superintendent.
And if you could go to the top of the second page, Mr. Doherty, I just want to see the outcome of that motion. And Dr. Dragic, what was the outcome of the motion to appoint Dr. Dennis O'Hara as the new superintendent?
Motion carried unanimously.
Unanimously? If you could read.
It says motion carried unanimously.
I think you're reading the adjournment motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was kind of surprised, but I was just reading. I'm sorry. Yes. So yes, I'm sorry. Motion carried, 5 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstention.
Earlier during the hearing, there was reference to notes that Mr. Williams had presented from the executive session on this evening. Do you recall seeing those, Respondents Exhibit 8 and Respondents Exhibit 8A?
I'm sorry, you have to repeat the question.
Yes. Earlier in the hearing, there was testimony concerning an executive session that took place, and the minutes themselves were not displayed publicly, but the redacted version was presented.
Oh, yes. Yes, I understand your question now. Yes, absolutely. I do remember those exhibits. Yes.
And those minutes concerned certain discussions with Dale Caldwell. Do you recall that?
Yeah, yes, I do. Yes.
Mr. Caldwell, in fact, was a guest during the February 23, 2021 meeting, according to the minutes we just looked at.
Yes.
And is it your recollection that Respondents Exhibit 8 and the notes Mr. Williams presented were from the February 23, 2021 executive session of the board?
I don't know if I'd call them notes, but yes, that was from that session.
What would you call them?
I would call it a transcript.
Is Mr. Williams supposed to have a recording of the board meetings?
Objection.
Cases?
That is speculative. The council does not know That's speculative.
Why don't you,
And leading the witness.
well, it's not leading. Why don't you rephrase, Mr. Mulholland?
Sure. Is there a board policy that covers the recording of board meetings and executive sessions?
Yes, we absolutely do have a board policy that forbids recording and note-taking during executive session.
Judge, with your permission, I would ask Mr. Doherty to post Board Exhibit 46.
Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Dragic, have you seen Board Exhibit 46 before, titled Bylaws, Use of Electronic Devices During Public Board Meetings, Code 1511?
Yes, I have seen that.
I'd like to highlight the fifth line down, beginning with the word board members and administrators. And if you could just highlight that, those 2 lines of text, and then expand them for Dr. Dragic, please, Mr. Doherty.
Just to there, you want to go on to the next sentence?
That's perfect.
Like me to read that?
Yes, once he expands it.
Okay.
Dr. Dragic, would you please read the highlighted portion of Board Bylaw 1511?
Board members and administrators are prohibited from electronically or digitally recording in whole or in part any board meeting.
Have you reviewed the actual text of Respondents Exhibits 8 and 8A?
Yes, I have.
And do you have an understanding as to whether they, well, let me ask it this way. What is your understanding of what those records constitute as regards that portion of the executive session?
So they constitute the discussion that we had with Dr. Caldwell.
So I don't want to get into the executive content.
I see. Okay, you just want
Going to the nature of the document. What is it
Okay.
you believe you're looking at when you look at the text of Exhibits 8 and Respondents Exhibit 8 and 8A?
I believe I'm looking at a transcript because I have never in my life met a note taker.
Objection.
Basis?
The witness is speculating on the witness is speculating.
Mr. Williams, the witness was asked how she interprets what she was viewing, and she can answer as to that. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Dr. Dragic, continue.
So my interpretation of what I saw was that it was a verbatim transcript, a conversation that took place in executive session that could only have been obtained if someone had recorded it and then.
Objection.
transcribed it.
Basis?
The witness is speculating. The witness has no way of knowing my note-taking skills or how that was created or crafted.
That's correct, Mr. Williams. The witness, though, is now testifying that she knows for a fact that you recorded and then transcribed the discussion. She's testifying as to her impression of it. So I will allow you to continue.
Dr. Dragic, were you finished?
I'm done.
I noticed that some portions of the document marked as Respondents Exhibit 8A contain large blocks of text ascribed to Terry. I assume that's Terry Williams. Is that your understanding?
Yeah.
Do you recall ever seeing Mr. Williams speak for minutes at a time while taking copious notes about what exactly he was saying as he spoke during any executive session, let alone this one?
No, I've never seen him do that.
And having read Respondents Exhibit 8 and 8A, are you convinced that this is essentially a verbatim transcription?
Yes.
Did you see anyone in the room taking the sort of copious stenographic notes that would be necessary for a verbatim transcription to be created with pen or pencil?
Objection.
Basis?
We were all remote at the time of these interviews, and at various times people, well, first of all, you can't see what people are doing, number one, and number two, quite often myself or other colleagues had their cameras either turned off, so there's no way that the witness could see or know what I was doing.
Okay, the question, Mr. Williams, again goes to what the witness observed, and you can certainly on cross-examination probe her answer.
Dr.
Thank you.
Dragic, have you ever seen any board member taking the type of copious notes by pen or pencil that would be necessary to generate a verbatim transcription of any part of any board meeting?
As long as their screens were on, I have never seen that.
And even before the pandemic, when you all
And even before the pandemic, when we were in person, correct.
never saw that type of copious note-taking.
Not to that extent.
Getting back to the sequence of events, Respondents Exhibits 8 and 8A reflect conversations with Dale Caldwell that took place in executive session on February 23, correct?
Yes.
If we could bring up again Respondents, Board Exhibit 47, Mr. Doherty.
Yes, go ahead.
And if you could just focus on the portion adjourn to executive session and then reconvene in open session and the appointment of superintendent. That's fine. Perfect. Thank you. Dr. Dragic, when you reconvened in open session at 9:34, had all the discussions reflected in Respondents Exhibits 8 and 8A taken place? Were they completed?
You mean had our executive session discussions been completed?
Yes, that's my question.
Yes, yes, they have, yeah.
So the points that Mr. Williams has made concerning information shared by Mr. Caldwell in executive session, that was all done and completed by 9:34. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Armed with that knowledge, what resolution did the board make and pass?
So after that discussion, which included Dr. Caldwell and everything that was transcribed by Mr. Williams, we voted on the resolution to appoint Dr. Dennis O'Hara as our new superintendent, and that resolution passed.
Mr. Williams brought out questions concerning whether Ray and Associates Representative Dale Caldwell had withheld information. Do you recall that?
I do.
And that was, without going into the substance, other than that, that was part of the topic of Respondents Exhibits 8 and 8A, right?
Yes, yes, it was, yes.
Did any of that information cause you to doubt the value of Ray and Associates and what they had brought to the table and the job they had done in helping you with the search process?
Not for a moment.
Did any of that cause you to doubt your ability to vote on the appointment of a new superintendent?
Clearly not, because we did.
And what about the particular candidate, Dennis O'Hara? Did any of that information brought out in executive session cause you to doubt the decision to appoint Dr. O'Hara as your next superintendent?
Clearly not, because we voted him in with a 5-2 vote.
Just a minute, Judge. I want to check my notes and see if there's anything else to cover.
It's fine.
Yes. With the judge's approval, Mr. Doherty, I'd like you to bring up Board Exhibit 37, already in evidence.
Go ahead, please.
Dr. Dragic, do you recall receiving from Antoinette Darden-Cintron Dennis O'Hara's March 13 email and the accompanying letter?
Yeah.
Mr. Doherty, with the judge's approval, I'd ask you to bring up 37A, which is the third page in of Exhibit 37.
Yes, please.
Dr. Dragic, do you recall seeing Dennis O'Hara's March 13, 2021 letter attached to his email of that same day?
I remember that very well, yes.
In this letter where, strike that, what do you recall as your reaction when you saw that Dr. O'Hara was withdrawing his candidacy on March 13?
Well, I think I went through, I don't know, what is it, like the 5 stages of grief very quickly. I mean, I think it was grief. I mean, I really think it was, you know, I couldn't believe it. Then I did. Then I was angry. Then at the end, I was just really very sad. I was very sad. I was very sad for our community and for our children and for a lost opportunity. It was and sad for all the work that we had done and that was sort of just kind of thrown away. Yeah, it was a lot of emotions that day. Huge disappointment.
Disappointment in anyone in particular?
Well, I would say probably I was not quite generous enough to be disappointed with Mr. Williams. I think I was mostly angry with him because I really attributed this letter to as a direct consequence of his actions. And the fact that he single-handedly essentially undid the will of the entire board, or at least of the majority of the board.
How had Mr. Williams voted with regard to the motion to appoint Dennis O'Hara?
He was the only one who voted no.
And whose wishes ultimately carried the day?
Ultimately, it was his wishes that carried the day.
Okay, I have no further questions on that. I do have a technical point I need to clean up with you. In Mr. Williams' February 23 email, he included a number of email attachments. You mentioned that earlier. Do you recall?
Yes, yes, I do.
With the judge's approval, I'd like to bring up a redacted version of one of those attachments, and it's at the back of Board Exhibit 33. It's 33G, redacted. And you'll have to look for that, Mr. Doherty. There are two versions of 33G, Judge. G is in golf.
Yes,
There's 33 golf G as transmitted by Mr. Williams. And then there's a redacted version of it that omits certain information, and the portions that are redacted are indicated on the face of the redacted document. So if Mr. Doherty could bring that up with your approval, I have questions of Dr. Dragic about that.
yes, please do.
Which page do you want to go to?
Well, the first page of 33G redacted.
Second. There you go.
Dr. Dragic, do you recall this as one of the attachments to Mr. Williams' email to the board superintendent candidates?
Yes.
If you could go to the second page, Mr. Doherty. And you see there, there are two blocks marked redacted. And if you could go to the third page then, Mr. Doherty, I want to focus the witness on that. If you could illuminate that second portion from Kiana Washington and the redacted. Dr. Dragic, do you recall, without going into the substance, generally seeing the text of this email when it was part of the attachment to Mr. Williams' email to the board superintendent candidates?
Yes, I do remember that.
Do you
Yes.
recall having any particular concerns about the content that has been redacted from this email? Again, without going into the content, I don't want you to do that. I just want you to state first initially whether you had any concerns.
I was gravely concerned by the content.
And if you can, without disclosing the content, what was your concern?
It contained privileged information that no school district, no school board is ever under any circumstances allowed to share with anyone. It's one of the biggest no-nos of being a school district, whether you're an administrator or a board member.
And generally, if we could just categorize it, does this relate to buildings or personnel working for the district or students?
It had to do with students.
And did it include student identifying information?
Yes,
Did it
yes. I'm sorry,
include-
I didn't know I was allowed to go that far, but yes.
Did it include information concerning any particular student's educational record?
Objection.
Basic,
Without any information as to what was said, that is speculative.
no, it's not speculative. The witness can testify as to what she saw.
Just yes or no, Dr. Dragic? Did what
Yes.
the
Yes.
reflect information from any particular student's educational record?
Yes, it did.
Thank you. I have no further questions about that document. The last question I have for you, Dr. Dragic, it's a few questions. It pertains to the videotape that was displayed to Board President Darden Cintron. Did you have a chance to observe that videotape while it was being played?
Oh, yes, I did.
And did you participate in that meeting yourself that evening in actual life?
You mean in the meeting that was shown in the videotape? Yes. It was actually a morning meeting, but yes, I was there.
Okay, so you saw it in person unfold or on Zoom because it
On
was,
Zoom, yes. Yes, I was present. Yeah.
and you had a chance to watch the video along with the rest of the board the other night.
I did indeed.
I'd like to ask you first some questions about the first 20 minutes or so of the meeting. Who controlled the course of the discussion during the first approximately 20 minutes of that segment of the meeting?
That sounds like a rhetorical question. It was Mr. Williams.
Who chose what questions to be asked of the representatives from management, the assistant superintendent for business or curriculum who were on hand? Who chose what questions to ask management?
It was Terry Williams.
Who selected which budget items were the topic to be probed and analyzed during those approximately 20 minutes?
It was Mr. Terry Williams.
After approximately 20 minutes, did the board president, as you watched the meeting unfold, attempt to do anything?
Yeah, I
What
think
did
this
she try
is,
and do?
I think she tried to move the meeting and to sort of, get it to actually progress beyond Mr. Williams and have other board members participate, including herself.
What was the result of the board president's effort to bring Mr. Williams' comments to a conclusion?
It was an argument.
Anything else?
It was okay. It was an argument that was painful to watch. That was basically something that occurs on a regular basis, with Antoinette trying to get Mr. Williams to stop monopolizing a meeting. And when she does that, he pushes back and escalates and becomes what we all got to watch last week.
So if we could just describe roughly three things that we saw: Mr. Williams controlling a portion of the meeting, the board president trying to stop his commentary,
Right.
and then argument erupting. And was there name calling during that portion of that phase, that third phase? When you said there was argument, was there also name calling?
I'm sorry, I don't really recall. I have to tell you, on some level, I kind of shut down when this happens because it's so awful. So I'm sorry, I don't recall. I wouldn't be surprised, but I can't recall exactly.
So the video is what the video is, but if we could
Yes.
roughly focus on those three events: Mr. Williams controlling a portion of the meeting, the board president trying to bring his remarks to a conclusion, and then argument or pushback, as you called
Yes.
it. If we could call that a sequence of 1, 2, and 3, have you seen that pattern before?
More than I would like to count. Yes.
How often does that pattern play itself out with Mr. Williams?
I would say more often than not. I would say that at most of our meetings, we have some rendition of that pattern.
Does it happen in executive session as well?
Absolutely.
Dr. Dragic, what is the effect on the school district of that pattern playing itself out again and again?
Objection.
As you see things, what is the effect on the school district of that pattern playing itself out?
Your objection, Mr. Williams?
Well, he rephrased the question, but my objection is the witness is not in any capacity, has no ability to know what the effect on the school district is.
Okay, as a trustee of the district, she can testify as to her belief of what the effect might be. You can answer the question.
May I go ahead? Okay, thank you. So I think that you can break down the effect into sort of two categories. One is the effect that it has on the way that the board functions. So as I mentioned earlier, when you were asking me about the sequence of events, and I couldn't actually recall if there was name calling, and I said I shut down. And I think that all of us actually, in one way or another, shut down when this happens, and it just really basically precludes us from being
Objection.
able to do our job.
Well,
The trust, I'm sorry.
what's
The
your,
witness cannot know how this affects other people. She can only speak as to how it affects her.
that's argument for cross-examination, Mr. Williams, for your questions. But I will
Sure,
allow
thank
her to
you.
testify as to, again, her perception of the effect. Go ahead.
Okay, so my perception is that we are all, in one way or another, stymied from being able to really carry out our board duties effectively. I mean, look, we're volunteers, we have families, we have jobs, we have spouses and homes, and we do this, and we should be able to do it as efficiently and as well as possible. And when we have to deal with this kind of uproar at almost every meeting, it makes our job really impossible. That's one thing. And then the second thing is the effect on the community, which is that when these incidents happen, we inevitably, we look bad. We look awful. And we get feedback from the community that this is undignified, and that on some level we lose trust, which, you know, we earlier said is really essential to our job as trustees. So that's my answer.
Judge, I have no further questions of Dr. Dragic.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Williams, I'm certain you have cross-examination. Is that correct?
I do.
Okay, why don't we take, it's 8:07. Why don't we, do you need a break, Mr. Williams, to prepare? I'm going to do a break anyway, but do you need, in terms of me determining the time, do you need a few minutes?
I do.
Okay, so it's 8:08 now. Why don't we come back at, is 8:20 sufficient for you?
Yes.
Okay, we'll come back at 8:20. Thank
Judge,
you.
Dr. Dragic had her hand up. I don't
Oh,
know.
yes, I'm sorry, Dr. Dragic.
I was actually going to request a break. Thank you.
There you go. Okay,
All right,
we'll
thank
see
you so
everyone
much.
at 8:20.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, good. I moved back. I moved back to my regular spot, so let me just plug my computer in.
Okay, let's see, do we have everyone?
I'm just changing paper, Judge.
That's fine.
All set, Judge.
Let's see, we're singing. Okay. We'll wait for Mr. Williams.
Are we all back?
We're waiting for Mr. Williams.
Also, Ms. Darden Cintron just advised that she'll be joining shortly.
Very good, thank you.
Sorry for the delay.
No problem. Okay, back on the record. Mr. Williams, you can proceed with your cross-examination. I would just instruct the witness to be sure to listen to the question asked, as you probably can anticipate. The nature of the questions will be different. Many will call for a yes or no answer. Please just answer the question directly and understand that Mr. Mulholland will have an opportunity for redirect examination, okay?
So,
Let me just hear Dr. Dragic speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, okay.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Go ahead, Mr. Williams. Thank you.
so if the tech could please put up exhibit number 14, respondent exhibit number 14, please.
Yes, please do so.
Is this the video to play back?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, let me hang on a second. I got to get it set up then.
Sure.
I note for the record that Ms. Darden Cintron has joined.
Oh, shoot. Okay, do you want me to start playing it, or what do you want to do?
Just don't start playing it quite yet. So just for expediency, if I could get agreement from the witness, because I played part of this video, I played most of this video, or I played part of this video last session, that for the first 2 minutes of the time, that in contravention to what President Darden Cintron said in her email, I did not spend the first 2 minutes. I did not open the meeting immediately yelling at her. Would you agree with that, or do we have to play that?
Objection. Objection
Mr. Mulholland,
goes beyond the scope of the direct examination.
Mr. Williams, you want to be heard?
It does not go beyond the scope, because this is part of the record. This is something that Mr. Mulholland and the board submitted as part of their charges against me, that the email in which Dr. Antoinette sent to the attorney accusing me of immediately screaming at her at the meeting. I'm merely pointing out and trying to save time. We can play it from the beginning, but
Okay, Mr. Williams, I will allow the questioning in this regard, because there was reference on direct to the videotape, and the witness confirmed that she watched it, and she addressed what occurred during the first 20 minutes. So if the witness recalls enough from viewing it the other night, she can answer Mr. Williams's question. However, if she needs it replayed, we can do that.
you know what? Let's play the video
No,
from the
no.
beginning.
Mr. Williams, just a second. Let the witness, you ask the witness a question, let her answer.
I withdraw the question. I withdraw the question.
All right.
Tech, please play the video from the beginning to the 2-minute mark, please.
No, and we're going to
I can't hear anything. Is that normal?
I don't recall from the other night, but Tech, is there an issue with the sound, or is there no sound on the video?
There was no sound on that part of the video. I mean, it's playing, but I started it from
All
the
right.
beginning.
The tech is doing it correctly. This is an accurate representation. Tech, if you could just, thank you, keep the timing there if you could. I know it's a little difficult.
All right, good evening, everyone. It is 6:38, and I'm calling our budget meeting to order. All right, everyone, you have already you've received the current draft. Is this draft 8 we're on? I
8B.
8B, okay, we have 8B. Can everybody, if you haven't already pulled it up, can you please pull it up so that for those who may have some questions about current draft.
Okay, Tech, if you could pause it.
Oh, that's-
So Tanya, yes or no? Has the meeting started?
Yes.
Yes or no? Did I begin the meeting by yelling at the president?
No.
Yes or no? Can you see the hand clap signal in the can you see my picture first of all?
Yes.
Yes or no? Can you see the hand clap icon there in my picture?
Yes.
Yes or no? Does that usually signify that I have a question or that I want to say something?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tech, could you please continue until I ask you to stop?
Do you have a problem with that? Got to mute. I just want the, I want the board and the community to know that this budget actually reflects comments that were made at the fiscal planning meeting on Saturday. And it also reflects recommendations that the board has offered the administration. So I just want to be clear that we've heard the voices. And so, we can begin to open this for discussion. I think there's another question.
Antoinette.
I'm just trying to get to it because I was looking at the budget. Yes, Terry.
So if what would be helpful to me, since we just received this, is if Dr. Chase and Mary could perhaps tell us the differences between, I guess we call this 8B, because when we last met, I guess we had done 8A, and that version had 0% tax levy. And so I want to know what this one is. I basically want to know what's the difference between these two budgets. Tech, can you pause this, please?
I can tell you, since the budget that we had on the website on Saturday,
Pause it there, please.
based on responses at the fiscal planning meeting.
Thank you. So Tanya, yes or no? Did I wait patiently and quietly until the president acknowledged my raised hand?
Yes.
Yes or no? Have I raised my voice or started shouting at the president or at anyone else in the meeting?
Judge, I object to this line of questions. It's beyond the scope of the direct. It was not the point that I made. It's repetitive, and this went on for well over an hour the other evening, and it's redundant and cumulative. I have a whole host of objections, Judge.
Well, I still do believe that it was within the scope of direct because direct spoke about the first 20 minutes. However, Mr. Williams, the tape is in evidence. It is what it is. It represents what it is. It's the best evidence, in fact, of your behavior that night. So I do believe that the questioning of the witness on this point, after having spent the time we did with the tape the other day, is cumulative and redundant.
Your Honor, I would disagree because this witness has a different recollection. The last conversation was with one witness. This is a separate witness, and this witness has brought up other points that the other witness did not bring up. So my questions to her about this are going to be different, and it will be in response to the points that the counsel made in his examination.
Mr. Williams, though, again, my ruling is that this is redundant in that we have gone through the tape at the last day of hearing for the first several minutes. We spent well over an hour on it. And again, the best evidence of your behavior is the tape, and I'm certainly capable of viewing it as a piece of evidence and drawing my own conclusions from it.
Your Honor, I would just add that prosecution counsel said that he cited this tape and said that I called names, and I'm going to show that I did not called names. And in fact, it was the president that called names and that it was another board member. And I think it needs to be drawn out that the witness may have perjured herself.
Mr. Williams,
And
I'm capable of reviewing the tape, which, believe me, I will do in its entirety since the whole thing is in the record, and drawing my conclusions from that as to who said what and whether the characterization offered by either the first or the second witness or both of them is accurate. So I'd like to move on. If you want to ask questions from the witness's recollection of the tape based on her limited testimony on direct, you can do that, but we're not going to go back through the tape.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. So Tanya, yes or no? You said that I called somebody a name in the first 20 minutes of the playing of this tape.
Objection. Mischaracterizes prior testimony. Judge, I asked the witness if there were names called. She said she didn't remember.
That's correct.
So Tanya Dragic said nothing about name calling.
I would like the stenographer to read back the record because that is not my recollection.
Why don't you just ask the witness questions? Again, I'm capable of comparing contradictory testimony on direct and cross-examination.
Okay.
And for the record, the witness's testimony that she did not recall name calling.
I would like to hear that for myself read back, please.
Judge, I object. That's a waste of time for everyone here. This proceeding needs to move forward, not backward.
Judge, you just said that.
Mr. Williams, Mr. Williams, do not argue with me. Okay, reporter, please go back to the testimony. It's the last section of the testimony in the examination on direct. And it begins with Terry Williams controlled the meeting. The president tried to stop him. There was arguing and pushback, including name calling, and the witness said, "I do not recall." I shut down when that happens because it is so awful. Please go back to that point and reread it. And then we're moving on, Mr. Williams.
I'm sorry, is the stenographer going to read it back or?
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if I was waiting. Okay.
And reporter, it's just before the last section on the effect of the school on the school district.
I mean, I have one part here, Judge. I don't know if this is what you look, it's pertaining to that answer. I think that you can break down the effect into sort of two categories. One is the effect that it has on the way that the board functions.
It's just before that.
Just before that, all right.
She says it was painful to watch. It's something that occurs on a regular basis. The question was intended.
Yeah, yep, I think I got it.
Okay.
I think I got it. I'm just trying to get, so if we could just describe roughly three things that we saw. Mr. Williams controlling a portion of the meeting, the board president trying to stop his commentary, answer right, question, and an argument erupting, and there was name calling during that portion of that phase, that third phase. You call it argument. Was there also name calling? Answer, You know, I'm sorry, I don't really recall. I would have to say on the same level, I kind of shut down when this happens because it is so awful. So
All
I'm
right.
sorry, I don't recall.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Williams, she said she doesn't recall. Ask another question, please.
Sure, thank you. Yes or no, Tanya? Do you well, let me rephrase. Do you recall at some point during that conversation with Antoinette and myself that yes or no, she called me a liar?
Sorry, is this in reference to this particular tape?
Yes, it is.
During that meeting, that's the frame of reference.
I'm sorry, I do not recall.
Yes or no, do you recall that Antoinette and myself went back and forward for approximately 5 minutes?
Yes,
Yes or no, is the board president the person who is charged with managing the meeting?
yes,
Yes or no, at some point, do you recall Trustee Carey interjecting?
yes.
Yes or no, do you recall her calling me childish?
I can't answer that as a yes or no.
But yes, you do recall her interjecting.
Yes,
Yes or no, do you recall the president asking her not to interrupt and interject?
yes.
You do recall her saying that?
Something to that effect, yes.
Okay, let's move forward. Let's talk about the executive sessions. And we're going to talk about the one in which the comments that you made about Dr. Valenti occurred. Were we in executive session when you made your age discrimination comments about Dr. Valenti?
Objection. That mischaracterizes the facts and evidence. It's misleading. It's unfair. I object.
Yes.
It does not mischaracterize the facts, Judge, because the memo will show that the lawyer did not say her comments were not discriminatory,
Mr. Williams,
as I will prove.
what constitutes age discrimination is a legal conclusion. Rephrase your question.
Were we in executive session when you made the comments that led to Dr. Valenti threatening to sue the district? Yes or no?
I don't really know how to answer that question. Yes, I made a comment.
Yes or no? Thank
Objection,
you.
Judge. If she can't answer the question.
She said yes.
No, Mr. Williams, stop arguing, okay? Why don't you re-ask your question because the witness did not directly answer it.
She did directly answer it.
Mr. Williams,
She directly answered the question.
Mr. Williams, you know what? I would like you to not argue with me when I make a ruling. The record is the record, okay? Ask the witness again, because if she did answer it, I didn't understand her answer.
I would ask the judge to have the stenographer read it back first before I ask it again, because I think she answered it. I was clear in my question, and I think she answered it.
The record is what the record is. I'm telling you to either move on or ask your question again.
Were we in executive session when you made your comment about Dr. Valenti's age?
Yes.
Do you believe, yes or no, do you believe it is appropriate to make comments about a district employee's age?
No,
Yes or no, but you did make a comment about Dr. Valenti's age.
It's been asked and answered. Ask another question.
Thank you. Yes or no, are age discrimination comments a violation of the board norms or a violation of the spirit of the board norms?
Objection.
Basis, go ahead.
It's a hypothetical question. There's no evidence of age discrimination. There's evidence to the contrary. And I think it calls for a legal conclusion. It's beyond the scope of what the witness testified to. And she's not a legal expert. If he wants to hire a legal expert and retain that person to come in and testify as to a legal conclusion, by all means, Mr. Williams can do that. But he certainly should not be allowed to co-opt a lay witness without legal training and ask her to opine on a legal matter.
I didn't ask her about a legal matter, Judge. I asked her if it was a violation of the board norms. I didn't ask her if it was a violation of any law. The attorney is misrepresenting my comments.
You asked if it's a violation to make age discrimination comments. Why don't you rephrase your question? Rephrase your question, Mr. Williams.
Your Honor, I'm going to say what I said, and then you can tell me if you agree. Are age discrimination comments a violation of the board norms?
Okay, as
Or a
I just
violation?
said, you referenced age discrimination comments. That is a legal term of art. You can rephrase your question. I'm not saying you
Okay.
can't ask the question, just
Okay.
rephrase it. You can't keep using the term age discrimination because it's legally conclusive, okay? Go ahead.
Got it. Thank you. Are comments about a employee's age a violation of the board norms or a violation of the spirit of board norms?
Judge, I object on another level. Dr. Dragic and her conduct is not on trial here.
That is true, Mr. Williams. I'm not sure give me an offer of proof
Sure.
where you're going.
Yeah.
with these
Yeah,
questions.
where I'm going with this, obviously, Your Honor, is the fact that the board has alleged that that my comments made in another executive session about Dr. Dragic's comments were a breach of executive session. So as part of proving that no breach occurred, I want to obviously state for the record what was said.
That's not what your question is, though. Your question is essentially whether or not Dr. Dragic violated board policy. Dr. Dragic is not on the subject of this hearing. So questions as to her, what you would characterize as misconduct, have no relevance really to the question of whether you engaged in misconduct. So ask another question, please.
Well, Your Honor, I would also argue that the council has, number one, brought up testimony, alleged testimony in a subsequent executive session that talks to this issue. And again, it is helpful to my case to first lay out what had occurred so that I can adequately address the misinformation that he has spread.
Okay, thank you for that. I've made my ruling. Ask another question, please.
Okay. Did Board President Darden Cintron interrupt you when you made the age comments about Dr. Valenti? Yes or no?
I don't remember who it was.
Yes or no? Somebody told you that it was inappropriate?
Yes.
Yes or no? You did not know previously that commenting about somebody's age is inappropriate?
Yes, I did know.
Yes or no? But you made the comment anyway?
Yes.
Okay. During your, yes or no? During your testimony, you mentioned yes or no? Okay. According to your testimony, you said Carol Melnick the board attorney said that your comments did not amount to age discrimination.
Yes.
Yes or no? Do you have any proof of this other than your memory?
No.
No. Yes or no? We did get a memo, and Judge, let me ask you this. I need a little direction here because we didn't introduce the memo publicly last time, but we allowed the other witness to see it. Can we show Dr. Dragic that memo as well, and then I can ask my question?
In the exhibit you're referring to.
It would be exhibit, oh boy, bear with me 1 second, please. It would be the attachment in exhibit 33, but I think what I did last time is I sent it, because the attachment was not able to be opened, I sent it separately.
Are you talking about Respondents Exhibit 33?
Respondents Exhibit 33 contains an attachment.
It has not been entered into evidence, Respondents Exhibit 33.
Sure, okay. But I wanted to refresh the witness's memory.
The witness hasn't indicated that she can't ask a question. The witness.
Sure. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. Yes or no? Do you recall receiving a memo from the law firm of Jasper and Schlesinger on the topic of age discrimination comments?
Yes.
Yes or no? Was that memo dated? Bear with me 1 second. Yes or no? Do you recall that memo was dated January 6, 2020?
I don't recall the exact date.
Yes or no? Do you recall receiving that memo in January?
I'm sorry, you would have to show it to me. I do not recall.
Judge, may I send the memo to the witness?
Are you talking about what you offered as Respondents Exhibit 33 that's not entered into evidence?
Correct, but we allowed the previous witness to take a look at it because, well, no, 33 is in evidence, but there is a attachment to it, and we allowed the previous witness to view that because we didn't want to breach attorney-client privilege.
Judge, I have 33 as, Respondents 33 is being out, not in evidence.
No, it is not entered into evidence.
In your email, in the email dated May 4th, Mr. Mulholland says, as you recently proposed additional respondents exhibits, I have no objection to, and I'm prepared to stipulate that the following new respondents exhibits may be admitted into evidence. Respondents exhibits 14, 15, 19, 20, 21, 32, and 33. The email dated May 4th, 2021 at 3:46 p.m.
Let's go off the record for a moment. I need to check the email.
Judge, I think Mr. Williams is trying to get to respond as Exhibit 38. That might be the confusion here.
I think you may be correct. Ask your question, Mr. Williams.
Let's take 1 second, please. Yes or no, Tanya, do you recall receiving this email?
Yes, I do.
Yes or no, do you recall that this is the first written response that we received regarding regarding comments about an employee's age?
That question, I would have to go back through my emails to make sure, but I can just ascertain that it is.
That was a yes or no question.
I don't know.
Okay. So Judge, again, let me ask for a little direction here, because I'd like to show this to the witness. We showed, regardless of my missteps about the numbering of the exhibits, one thing is certain: we showed this memo to the previous witness, and I would like this witness to also view this in order to ask her a few questions.
What memo are you referring to?
The memo from Jasper, the memo dated, the memo that's attached to Exhibit 38.
Judge, if it would help expedite things, Board President Darden Cintron testified that she did not send this email until the date on its face, April 9, and that was the first time she recalled sending the January 6 memo attached to it to the full board.
That's correct, Mr. Williams. So if it,
I'm willing to stipulate to that, Judge.
counsel will stipulate, and that's consistent with what the witness testified to at the last day of hearing, the witness who composed and distributed this email.
Yes, but again, Your Honor, this is another witness. This witness testified to having heard this information in executive session. She cannot. She said that she heard this in executive session, but when I asked her, okay, I'll move on. Okay. So, going back to the the meeting, the board meeting of January 7th. And if you could put up the exhibit, and I'll tell you this in a second, which exhibit it is. Exhibit 48, I believe.
That would be for the record, District's Exhibit 48.
District's Exhibit 48. So you testified earlier. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just wait for that.
It's up.
Okay. So you testified earlier that this is the meeting in which Carol Melnick said that your comments did not amount to discrimination.
Yes.
But yes or no, you have no proof of that. It's just your memory of that.
Yes.
Yes. And you noted that Mr. If you could highlight when Dr. Valenti left the meeting. I think it's further down, Tech.
Judge, it's at the bottom of the second page.
At the very bottom, under reconvene in open session.
Well, you know what? Let me just ask this so that we can expedite it. Yes or okay, there it is. Okay. So Dr. Valenti left the meeting at 9:30. You testified to that. And then also you testified yes or no that I entered the meeting at or about 9:40.
Yes.
Yes. Yes or no, do you know what time the discussion with Carol Melnick began, at which she apparently told you that your comments were not age discriminatory?
I do not recall the exact time, but it was after.
After Dr. Valenti left. I'm sorry.
Yes, I think
Okay.
earlier he left, yes.
Is 9:40 early enough? Yes or no?
Maybe.
So yes or no, you don't know if I was there or not.
I believe she said it to the whole board.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
Mr. Williams, ask another question if the witness has not answered the way you would expect the witness to answer.
I'm sorry. I'll let the witness answer the question.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question is, so you don't know whether or not I was in the meeting at this time, at the time that Carol was addressing the board on this topic.
I believe that we were all there. It was an important topic, but I cannot, I wouldn't put my firstborn on the line.
So yes or no, you don't know the time at which this discussion took place.
Objection, asked and answered.
After
Has
9:30.
been sustained.
Sure. And yes or no, you have no proof that this discussion took place.
That's also been asked and answered.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Yes or no, during your previous testimony, you said that according to your testimony, Carol Melnick said that your comments about age was a non-issue. Yes or no?
I can't answer that as a yes or no. I think I was.
I can ask the court reporter to read it back to you.
No, we're not going to keep doing that, Mr. Williams. Ask your questions. This is cross-examination. The witness will answer as best she can, and the record is what the record is, and that's the basis upon which you can make whatever arguments you want post-hearing in your brief.
Yes or no, is are comments about someone's age a non-issue for you?
But that's different from age discrimination.
I didn't ask you about age discrimination. I asked you, I'm not allowed to ask you about age discrimination.
Okay.
Judge,
Yes or no?
Judge, is there a question pending?
There is a question.
Wait, just a minute, Mr. Williams. Reporter, please read back the last question that was not yes or no.
Yes or no, are comments about someone's age a non-issue for you?
Judge, I object to this question. I don't believe it's relevant or germane to the charges of misconduct. I could explain my point if you'd like, Your Honor.
Why don't you put your point on the record?
Mr. Williams is charged with revealing a statement that was made, number one, and he's charged with twisting the words so as to omit and in fact state the contrary of what the board had been informed about the nature of those words and the consequence of those words. What this witness, Dr. Dragic, believes about the impact of those words is irrelevant. It's what was said, and was it said or not? Was it said in executive session or not? And was it revealed by Mr. Williams or not? Thoughts and feelings and opinions about those words are irrelevant.
Yes, I sustain the objection. And again, I'm going to remind Mr. Williams that nobody else's conduct is under scrutiny in this proceeding. Because you are representing yourself, I'm trying to give you a good degree of latitude. However, this is not a relevant question to the issue before us.
Thank you, and I appreciate the latitude. Yes or no, Tanya, were you embarrassed that your comments about Dr. Valenti's age were made known to him?
Sorry, I keep getting asked questions that I really can't answer yes or no. It's.
Your Honor, I think that was a pretty clear question I asked. Were you embarrassed that you're...
Mr. Williams, I don't again believe this is a relevant question. It doesn't matter if this witness was embarrassed or not by the question in the scope of what we're here to address.
That may well be, Your Honor, but...
Mr. Williams, that's my ruling. Just ask another question, please.
You ruled and there was no objection. The witness didn't want to answer the question, and you ruled on the witness not answering the question.
Could not answer the question in a yes or no. Okay, I don't view the question to be relevant. I don't need to wait for an objection to make a ruling if I feel that time during this proceeding is not being spent judiciously. There are important points for you to make in your defense, and I'm trying to keep you relevant to that.
Thank you. Yes or no? When I shared my concerns about your serving on the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction Search Committee, was the board in executive session?
Yes.
Yes or no? Was voicing my concern about such a personnel function appropriate for executive session?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yes or no? Was voicing my concern about a personnel function such as that appropriate for executive session?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Yes or no? Do members of the public ever ask personnel questions at board meetings?
Yes.
Yes or no? Does the board or president ever answer those questions?
No.
Yes or no? If the board or president never answers personnel questions, then my bringing up, then my urging them to inquire about the topic is a non-issue. Would you agree?
No,
Okay.
I mean, no, I wouldn't agree. I guess that was a question. Do I agree? No, I don't agree.
Okay. Thank you. So let me move on to address some of the comments you said about my behavior. Yes or no? Am I the board member who most uses the raised hand feature when trying to ask a question?
Yes.
Yes or no? Tracy Mayers and Cora Carey interrupt other board members and administrators more than anyone else.
I have a problem with that question.
Well, it's
Your Honor.
just a minute. It's cross-examination, so you need to answer it. Mr. Mulholland will have the opportunity to ask you additional questions if he deems it appropriate on redirect.
Okay, I'll have to answer that. No.
Yes or no? Interruptions by Ms. Mayers and Ms. Carey rarely receive a public rebuke from President Darden Cintron.
Could you read that? I mean, could you say that again so I know which
Sure.
way?
Interruptions by Ms. Mayers and Ms. Carey rarely receive a public rebuke from President Darden Cintron. Yes or no?
No.
Yes or no? Trustee Mayers is allowed to spend several minutes, sometimes hours, on issues that interest her, and President Darden Cintron does not prevent that.
Not hours, but sometimes she does. I'm sorry. I don't know how to answer like yes or no, but.
Okay,
Yes.
let me rephrase. Trustee Williams is allowed to spend several minutes on issues that interest her, and President Darden Cintron does not prevent that.
Yes.
Yes or no? Do you recall the meeting at which the board voted to hire Mary O'Neill to help with the transition of her replacement?
Objection, relevance beyond the scope of direct.
Mr. Williams, you want to be heard?
Yes, this is directly relevant to the witness's testimony that I spend a lot of time on issues, and that the president has to struggles to rein me in. And what I intend to prove here is that other board members, in particular, Ms. Mayers, spends a lot of time on issues, but the president does not attempt to rein her in.
You just asked that and it was answered. In fact, the witness answered yes, but Mr. Mulholland is correct that there was no testimony on direct about Mary O'Neill hiring somebody to, being hired with respect to a transition.
Well, I'll rephrase the question.
Keep it within the scope of direct, or you're not going to be allowed to ask it.
Okay, you tell me if this is incorrect then. Okay, yes or no? Do you recall a meeting at which the board attempted to hire a replacement. Let me rephrase, please. Do you recall do you recall a time at which the board discussed an executive session and reached a consensus to move forward with a temporary?
Let me stop you, Mr. Williams. Do not discuss specifics of discussion in executive session. I'm telling you that for your own benefit.
Yeah, but Your Honor, you allowed you allowed board counsel to do that on several occasions.
Counsel made a very specific point of directing the witness to not discuss the specifics of executive session discussion.
Okay. Yes or no? We're changing subjects. Yes or no? Tanya, have we ever socialized outside of a Board of Education session?
You and I?
You and I?
No.
No. Yes or no? Have I ever been to your home?
No.
Yes or no? Have you ever introduced me to your family?
No.
Yes or no? To your knowledge, have I ever met your children?
Objection, Judge. I don't know where this is going. We're now bringing in family.
Yeah,
I can tell you, Judge, this is going because the previous witness testified about that she held a retreat in response to questions that I brought up, and it was directly relevant to Tanya's belief that I had spoken about her children at a meeting.
Mr. Williams, cross-examination is confined to the scope of direct. What any other witness said during another day of hearing is completely irrelevant to what you can ask this witness. You're confined to what Mr. Mahalan specifically addressed on direct.
Okay. So then I'm going to jump to the superintendent interviews. Yes or no? During the interviews, I contextualized my two questions.
Yes.
Yes or no? The search consultant recommended that we ask, as close as possible, ask each candidate the same question.
Yes.
Yes or no? If I contextualized my first question, let me rephrase. Yes or no? If I contextualized, if I added context to during the first interview, I was obligated to then add that same context to subsequent interviews to remain consistent.
Not in my mind, no.
Okay. Yes or no? You added context to your questions. Yes
To
or
one of
no?
them. Yes.
To one of them. Thank you. Yes or no? The president never stopped you from adding context to your question.
Yes, she did.
Yes or no? When I contextualized my question about building projects, I said one of the current board members had worked to defeat the bond.
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no? Was that accurate?
Yes.
Yes or no? Did I name that board member?
No.
Yes or no? Was that board member in fact you?
Yes.
Yes or no? Did I lie?
No.
Yes or no? Did I tell the truth?
That's asked and answered, Mr. Williams.
Okay, I was just asking it from the other side of the equation. Bear with me while I get up my last set of questions, please. Yes or no, Tanya, during the interviews with the candidates, was it revealed to the board that material information about one of the finalists had not been shared with us?
I can't answer that as a yes or no, but I'm willing to give a short narrative answer if that's okay.
I'd rather you say yes or no. I think the question was.
Mr. Williams, it's fine. You don't have to allow her to go into a narrative, but she said she can't answer that.
Okay, all right. Bear with me a second. I think I just have a few additional questions. Tanya, have I ever called you any name other than Tanya, Trustee Dragic, or maybe even Dr. Dragic at a board meeting? Yes or no?
No.
Yes or no? Do you recall me calling President Darden Cintron any other name other than, excuse me, my house phone is ringing. Okay. Have you ever recalled me calling Antoinette anything other than Antoinette, Madam President, President Darden Cintron? Yes or no?
No.
Yes or no? Have you ever heard me call her Bad President Darden Cintron, for example?
Yes, yes.
No, as in a title, like President Darden Cintron.
Title, but as in an adjective, I mean, yes, not as a title, no.
Right, thank you. Okay, have you, yes or no, have you ever heard me call Ashley Pineda any name other than Ashley, Mr. Pineda, Trustee Pineda?
No.
Yes or no, have you heard me call Mr. Warner any name other than Mr. Warner, David Warner, Trustee Warner?
I do not recall, no.
Yes or no, have you ever heard me call Miss Carey any name other than Trustee Carey, Miss Carey, Cora, or any other name? Yes or no?
No name, no.
No. Yes or no, do you recall that Miss Carey, yes or no, have you recalled on a few occasions Miss Carey asking for information to be repeated because she was watching television?
I can't answer that question. I don't know what she was doing.
That's a yes or no question, or I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. Yes or no, do you recall Miss Carey saying she had not heard something we were discussing because she was watching the Prince special on television?
I'm sorry, I don't recall.
Okay. Yes or no, have you ever heard me call Trustee Mayers any name other than Tracy or Trustee Mayers?
Yes, I have heard you call her names. Yes. Yeah.
Could you please share with us what names have you heard me call her?
You've called her a Karen. You've called her a loser.
I'm sorry, you called her a what, the first one?
Karen.
Karen was the witness's testimony, like the woman's name, Karen.
Thank you.
And you've called her a crybaby.
Yes or no, have I ever entered a meeting and right at the start, just start calling Tracy Mayers any of the names that you allege that I called her?
No.
Yes or no, did I call those names in response to something she said to me? Yes or no?
I don't really quite know how to answer that question. I mean, it's part of an exchange. I'm sorry, is your question, were you provoked?
I think I asked
Read the last question, please, reporter.
Yes or no, did I call those names in response to something that she said to me?
I don't know.
Judge, somebody has their speaker on and I'm getting an echo, which makes it difficult to track the testimony.
I agree. Whoever is not speaking, whoever is participating other than the witness, please mute your voice, your sound.
So yes or no, are you saying that I just entered the meeting, or at some point in the meeting, just out of the blue, I called Tracy Mayers one of those three names? I'm sorry, you weren't heard, Tanya.
She didn't answer yet.
I said no, not out of the blue, no.
So then, yes or no, would you say that I was provoked by Miss Mayers in response to a provocation by Miss Mayers? That was my response to her.
I don't know. Were you provoked? I mean,
No.
Yes or no?
Calls for a yes or a no or an I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. So yes or no, we can reasonably conclude that the only trustee, according to your testimony, that I ever called a name was Trustee Mayers.
A name, yes.
Other than her name, yes?
Yes.
Her given name, yes. Yes or no, is it a responsible use of district funds to spend the amount of time and money prosecuting me because I called one trustee a name?
Objection, misleading, unfair.
The question, Mr. Williams, misstates the charges before you, so I sustain the objection.
I'll rephrase. Yes or no? Is it a good use of district funds to include a charge of name calling when only one board member was the target of name calling? Yes or no?
Judge, I object to this question. I think it goes to the legal strategy and it requires this witness to potentially reveal information about the overall structure of the charges. I find the question invasive.
The overall structure of the charges, Your Honor, are public. So that reasoning makes no sense. The witness was prepared to answer the question. It's either yes, no, or I don't know. But the structure of the charges are available for all to read.
Because this is cross-examination, because Mr. Mulholland will have the opportunity on redirect to follow up on any of these questions, I will allow the witness to answer the question.
Okay, it's yes.
Okay. Earlier you testified about how my behavior was disruptive. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no? Yes or no? You cited that my behavior during the candidate's interview was disruptive or contrary. Not. Let me rephrase. Yes or no? You testified that my behavior circumvented during the search for the superintendent. My behavior was in contravention to the will of the board.
Yes.
Yes or no? Did Dr. O'Hara, yes or no, did the board vote 5-1-1 to extend a contract offer to Dr. O'Hara?
Yes.
So yes or no, my opposition and behavior did not influence the board's decision?
No, not the board's decision, no.
Yes or no, you also stated that that my behavior has been disruptive to the board process.
Yes.
Yes or no, has the board been able to pass budgets in your time on the board?
Yes.
Yes or no, the hearing on 5/19, which was the subject of the videotape session, that was a budget hearing, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no, did I have a discussion and have questions about issues in the budget?
Yes.
Yes or no, did the board eventually pass a budget for that particular school year?
Yes.
Yes or no, my questions and objections thus did not impact the board's decision?
No.
Yes or no, have I ever said anything that has impacted your decisions on any matter before you as a voting trustee?
I would have to really think about that one very carefully.
Well, Judge, I would just ask, I think I asked that as a yes or no question.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Yes.
So yes or no, I have control over how you decide issues related to the school board.
Objection.
school board issues.
Objection argumentative.
Yes, that's sustained. You can make whatever argument you want, Mr. Williams, post-hearing brief based on the facts you elicit from the witness.
Okay. I do not have any additional questions for this witness.
Thank you. Mr. Mulholland, do you need 5 minutes before redirect?
I have no redirect, Judge.
Okay, thank you. Then the witness is done. Mr. Mulholland, so it's 9:35. I'm mindful of the expression at the last day of hearing about, people doing this after a full day of work. You have another witness, I assume, is that correct?
Yes, a very brief, Judge, and we could start Thursday with that witness. It'll go very quickly, and I could turn things over to Mr. Williams, whatever your pleasure, Judge.
Okay, why don't we do that then? Because I am reluctant to, again, begin with a witness, then break before we get through cross-examination and redirect. So we will then end for today. We will resume with the district's third witness. You also do you have redirect for Ms. Darden-Cintron?
I'm starting to think I do not, Judge, but I would like to reserve the final decision on that.
Yes, of course, you may do that.
We may be concluded there as well.
Okay, all right. So we will, why don't you make that decision so we can begin the next session, which is on the 13th, with any redirect examination if you do have that. Otherwise, we'll proceed to your third witness. And I note that our next scheduled date, the 13th, we will begin at 6:30, not 6 p.m. And to adjust the calendar, we are canceling the date of the 14th because of an issue with the recorder. We will resume after the 13th on the 17th. And on the 17th, we will commence at 6 p.m. Okay. If there's nothing further, then we're done for today, and we'll see you all in 2 days.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Judge.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judge.